So, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the CFCI webinar on workplace interior design. My name's Simon Smith. I'm chair of the CFCI and I'm hosting today's webinar. It looks like we've got nearly 70 people attending today. I expect a few more will be signing in as the webinar progresses, but that's quite a good turnout for today. So we have three speakers today and hopefully two panelists, further panelists from the CFCI who will be joining us, trustees. So today we're talking about workplace and interior design. As I said, we've got three speakers speaking today. That's Eve Waldron, Barnaby Clark and Steve Dobson. After the talk, we'll have a Q&A session, and joining our three speakers on the panel will be James Abraham, a CFCI trustee and partner at Bidwell's, and hopefully Bob Ench will also be joining us. Bob's a CFCI trustee and director at Morgan Sindall. So the way things are going to work today on this is we'll hear the three speakers. They'll each talk for about 15 minutes. And while they're talking, you'll be able to raise questions, Q&A, in the Q&A tab down at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So if you'd like to raise questions, we won't hear you, we won't see you today. All we will be able to do is see your questions. And we'll be storing those questions, and I'll be putting your questions to our panelists at the end of the presentation. We're all hoping to be done by around 2 p.m. today, so there'll be a few time checks on our speakers. I'll give them a 2-minute warning, but that's how we're going to work today. So if I just introduce our speakers. So as I said, we have Eve Waldron, who's going to be speaking first of all about the workplace and how it's evolved from the past. Eve has got her own practice, and she studied at the Rhode Island School of Design. And prior to that, setting up her own interior design consultancy, she worked at practices like KPF, Skidmore, Owings and Merrill, and Gensler. And interestingly, she's also just started up her own furniture dealership called EWOP, which stands for Everything Works Out Perfectly. Fantastic. So then Barnaby's going to follow Eve's talk. Barnaby Clark from Coel. Barnaby has a product design BSc, Bachelor of Science, and he had a career in interior design and build in both the UK and Australia. And for the last 6 years, Barnaby has been sales and marketing director at Coel. And then we've got Steve Dobson, who's going to be speaking to us about the future of workplace and how it's going to look. Steve's from Overbury. He's been working for 25 years in the industry, working at Vodafone, at their new HQ, and also I believe at Co-op's new HQ in Manchester. I think some of you may have read about that building as well. And there we have Bob Ench joining us as a CFCI trustee. Hi, Bob. And now Steve's working for Overbury, and he's going to be talking about the future of workplace design. I forgot to mention that Barnaby is going to be speaking about a case study of Bidwell's HQ in Cambridge, which was a CFCI and Cambridge Design and Construction award-winning building. There you go, a couple of years ago, I think. So you'll see some pictures of that building and also some feedback on how that building is working out. Okay, right, so what I suggest we do now is we hand over to our first speaker, Eve. She'll start sharing her screen now. And then again, if I can remind you to raise your questions in the Q&A panel or tab down the bottom of your Zoom screen, we'll keep a track of those and pose those questions later on. Okay, right, Eve, over to you. If all of our other attendees could put their speakers on mic, that would be good. Thank you, Eve.
Mute. Okay, hi, thanks, Simon. I lead a practice of 10 from our Cambridge-based studio, and we specialize in bespoke, high-quality workplace design, but we also work in the education, residential, and healthcare sectors. I consider myself to be a creative problem solver, and we try to add beauty and value into the parts of the building that are touched, felt, and seen. I think this might be one of the first times that an interior designer has spoken at the CFCI, so I just thought I would briefly touch on what it is that we do. Interior design is very specialized by sector and can be very technical and detailed. We generally follow the REBA plan of works and can be either appointed as lead consultant, or we can be appointed as part of a design team by the architect, project manager, or contractor, or sometimes we're brought in for the FF&E, the furniture element at the end of a project. But we feel we can add the most value when we're brought in early. Just touching very briefly on some of the types of work projects that we do. We do residential design, and this is a project we did with Bland, Brown and Cole architects, and it was a extensive refurbishment of a 1930s house. We have a strong portfolio in workplace, and this is a project we did with Niall McLaughlin, which was the top 2 floors of the Rank building for Jesus College. This project was shortlisted for an FX award, and I believe it won numerous architectural awards as well. We are strong on workplace. I cut my teeth, as Simon said, working in London and New York, doing large retail workplace projects, and this was a 200-person office for Dassault. We're starting to do a little work in healthcare, and I think a lot of the principles that we're learning through healthcare design will apply to workplace design post-COVID. We also work in supply furniture, design and supply furniture, and as this project on the left is for Tring School, and with Burl Foley Fisher Architects, we designed all the furniture for that and supplied it. And that's our new online shop, our digital platform on the right. So just a little bit about workplace sort of history and trends. I'm not going to go back too far, but just starting sort of mid-century and looking at how we've got to where we are with workplace design. I think in the mid-century, office layouts were such that the bosses and the managers had the perimeter spaces, they had all the light and the fresh air, and in the center of the office were the cubicles where the workers sat. This, thankfully, has now been sort of reversed with an interest and an understanding of wellness. We have a less hierarchical approach to office layouts now. Home working has been a trend that's been steadily gaining. I think in America, more than 50% of workers work at least part of the time remotely, and this is a trend that's going to be increasing, and obviously nobody anticipated the spike that we have now, but despite all the home working, we're hoping that people will be coming back to the office, and we think that they will come back to the office, mainly because people are sociable and collaboration and creativity is something that needs to be done face to face. And it can't be replicated with, you know, Zooming and completely with remote working. Another trend I wanted to touch on is activity-based working. This is a kind of buzzword, but what does it really mean? The notion is that nobody has an assigned seat, that you have workplaces provided, various workplaces that suit the task that you're doing. So whether it's more concentrated work or collaborative work or more social work, you've got a different type of workspace for that. I did some research through the Leesman Review, which is an independent workplace organization, and they identified 4 mobility profile types. So the chart on the right is from the Leesman Review, and mobility profile 1 is the sedentary person that's at their desk most of the time. and mobility profile 4 is the person that's in and out of the office. Interestingly, 85% of the people under 25 are mobility profile 1 and 2, so actually quite sedentary. So this needs to be applied quite carefully to each client and each project so that the proportion of spaces are suitable to the task. These are just some examples of other people's work that I found on the internet, showing sort of the variety of kind of playful spaces you can get with activity-based working. I think a lot of people are feeling that noise can be a problem in open plan offices, so there's lots of pods that are now popular, quiet, more residential feeling rooms, and even funny rooms with slides that begs the question, does activity-based working actually mean taking aerobic exercise at work? Maybe it does. One of the clients that we successfully applied activity-based working on was Prowler, a high-tech company here in Cambridge, and they had 8 separate user groups, and collaboration was key to their working, and they wanted us to provide lots of ways that their staff could collaborate and share ideas. So we evaluated their office through a series of questionnaires that we prepared and issued to the team through observation and through sort of meeting with them to tease it out. I wanted to touch briefly on branding because that's something that clients often ask us to get involved with, and often an office interior can be redone after a kind of major rebrand. Many clients feel that to incorporate your brand into your workspace, you've got to literally use the branding colors. And this is something that I don't necessarily agree with in all cases, but it's important to try to, interpret the client's brand into the space. And this can be done through color and furniture and different materials and even kind of more theatrical elements. Sustainability is very important and probably one of the key drivers in the construction industry at the moment. I wanted to say that I think the fundamental principle of sustainability is to design right and appropriately the first time, thus avoiding lots of refits and lots of redoing of interiors. So I think it's really important to design in context of the building and in, sort of harmony with the architecture. You can see in the lower left-hand corner how this room was before, rather soulless. This is a project for St. John's College, the top penthouse apartment in the Cripps building. And we did a light refurbishment. And I think sometimes, classic design really endures and kind of ensures its own longevity by its kind of inherent beauty. We were lead consultant for a major refurbishment for the University of Cambridge at Greenwich House, and this project had sustainability high on its agenda. It was always going to be a difficult project, not least because we were moving 9 user groups from the university, from the center of town, to a more remote location on the perimeter of town. And we were moving them into a building which was very cellular, and they wanted to open the building up, tear down all the walls, employ passive ventilation, heating and cooling, and make it, adapt it with as many, reaching as many BREEAM principles as possible. So 2 of the features that we employed were wind catchers and also phase change cooling. I think many of you know what wind catchers are. The cool air comes in through 2 sides of the vent on the roof, and it drops down, pushing the warm air out, creating a stack effect and a kind of self-momentum. Phase change cooling, these are large, I think there were 9 of them in the project, 7 meters long by 1 meter wide panels filled with eutectic salts, which freeze at a higher temperature than water. And what happens is in the summer months, the cool night air passes over the panels, and the panels store the coolth, and then to be given out into the office during the day. And in the evening, in the winter, the reverse happens.
2 minutes, Eve.
Okay. I just wanted to touch on wellness and biophilic design. I think some people think biophilic design is greenwashing, but it's actually recognized by the Well Building Institute. And biophilic design is the concept of bringing nature into the space. And it's proven to aid productivity and be relaxing and calming, and to have an overall good effect on wellness. I wanted to end on this slide, which is the High Line in New York, which is a project close to my heart and also close to where I used to live in Greenwich Village. And it really regenerated Lower Manhattan. And I think there's going to be a lot more integration of inside and outside spaces in the future as office workers come out of their buildings to take in fresh air. And I just wanted to end by saying, you know, I think we're all itching to get back to the workplace, hopefully not to sit in cubicles again, but to be more sociable and collaborative and to foster creativity. And many of the design principles that we've learned pre-COVID, I think, are still going to apply post-COVID. So the future of the office will need to be well thought out with interior design, with interior design and correct implementation. And that's my job.
Thank you very much, Eve. Super. Some very nice images there of green offices. Thank you very much for that. So, Barnaby, over to you. Thank you. And before we start, Barnaby, just very quickly, if you take yourself off mute, and also just to say we've got a Q&A going at the moment. There's a couple of questions coming in. If anybody has a Q&A, please remind you to raise those in the Q&A. So, Barnaby, over to you.
Thank you. So I'm Barnaby. I'm Sales and Marketing Director at Coel. For those of you who don't know us, we are based in Cambridge with an office in Oxford. We've been operating for over 30 years, specialising in the design and fit out of commercial office interiors and labs. So today I'm going to talk about two things. One is the modern office, and we're going to use Bidwell's as a case study to explain that. And then we're just going to move on and just talk about, in the short term, how can people safely get back to work and the methods we can employ to do so. So if we have a look at Bidwell's, we partnered with Bidwell's in 2016, and their existing office was highly divisional, so siloed working, very poor for interaction between teams, or poor for cross-selling. T-points dotted around, very small T-points, so people weren't really interacting with each other. They were just spending their time in their department. What the project objective was really to change this. It was to improve staff experience and their well-being, and their retention, their productivity, also improve the client experience as well, and around that using social space and collaboration to enhance it. A lot of workplace analysis was undertaken, and this really backed up Bidwell's desire to become a fully agile office space. So looking at the space, only 63% of staff are in settings for 80% of the time. So really it shows the number of positions they required to have at any one stage of people working. So moving forward, a lot of architectural work was undertaken, a huge project really to open up the space, but obviously time-wise, we'll just look at how that was used in terms of staff time utilization. So worst case occupancy levels, we're looking at up to 497 people at any one time. Very unlikely, but it really is something that needed to be considered. So if you can look at the top plan here, this just shows the ground floor. The colours are with the red, looking at more of a fixed traditional desk style space. In the amber, that's looking at sort of mid-term spaces of people sitting for 1 to 2 hours, dropping in and out of meetings. And then green, which majority is on the ground floor, is really short drop-in spaces, softer seating, working environments where really is informal meetings and so on. So a lot of those green spaces are within the cafe area, which if in the central of the space. So a lot of space devoted to a large cafe breakout area, a large reception area, lots of waiting, informal meeting areas, and then a large meeting suite on the ground floor as well. The first and second floor are a lot similar. So they have the required number of traditional desk settings to cope with the workplace analysis figures, but also around a new central staircase. We're looking at a lot more collaborative benches, again, drop-in work points, lockers, small meeting areas, and the toilets as well. So a real central hub to the building, and then areas where more considered work would allow. Not every job role was really going to allow for agile working. People didn't need it, so some fixed desks were given to the appropriate people. It was also considered that when people come into the office space, not everyone is going to want to move around the office all the time, and people are going to tend to head to their same teams. So neighbourhoods were set up so people would know where their departments are likely to be, and whether they choose to sit with that department or not is then their choice at the time, depending on the projects they're working on. Things that make this a success. So one of the key elements of really enabling and empowering the staff was the investment in technology. So all of Bidwell's staff have been provided with mobile devices. They can work from wherever they need to, whether that's, as shown in the picture, just sitting at a seat having a catch up in the breakout area, or whether sitting and plugging into a docking station at a more traditional desk. Crossover between socializing and collaboration is also key as well. A large amount of real estate has been devoted to the cafe area. So it's not something that's traditionally used as a cafeteria between midday and 2 p.m. It's something that's used throughout the day. It's a cafe. It's a space to go and have team meetings and hubs. And then it might get busy at lunchtime, but then other areas are available at that time for those meetings. A key one in an open plan office environment really is providing privacy where it's required. So when people do need to get away, those rooms are available. A quick look at look and feel. So I think Bidwell's is an example really of how modern offices are pulling away from that very austere corporate look. And especially in this situation, a lot of hospitality references have been brought in, and also some softer touches from residential design. Benefits of modern technology really allow us to visualize these projects before they go to site. So you can have a very photorealistic view of what the project might look like. And hopefully looking at this here then gives you a good idea on what the finished products look like. So here, I think you can see there's a large sort of take on hospitality design. You feel like you're checking into the space rather than arriving at a corporate workspace. Lots of very nice meeting rooms and I suppose lounge areas as well. For those who are interested, just to give you an idea of phasing on this, so from November 2016, 3 phases of 12 weeks, 41 weeks and 16 weeks, just to give you an idea of the duration. And really, how do we see that this project is a success? Well, the tangible items we've looked at with Bidwell's, an increase in employee satisfaction by 17% from the office prior, drop in sick days 23%, and then we've also got more cost-based reductions in electricity, water and shredding. So if we have a look at a summary, this is probably more of a summary about modern offices as a whole. It's all about employee autonomy, giving them the ability to work in a more autonomous way, whether that be, as we all are now at home, or whether it's a setting of their choice. And a lot of this comes from managerial style, so it's led from the top. A lot of the reason Bidwell's project was so successful that it really was led from the top. Those in the higher echelons were really leading by example, working from the collaborative spaces, no corner offices, no offices at all. The social and collaboration crossover again at Bidwell's is really important, and that's developed a lot of increased internal networking as well. So moving on, I think this is obviously a very important subject at the moment. So how can we get people back into the office and remain safe? We're looking at a few areas of this. Space planning, graphics, I think products that are on the market, and also just to mention now, mechanical updates. So obviously buildings have been dormant for a while. So what do we need to do to those buildings to make those buildings safe for people to re-enter them in terms of plumbing and so on? I think the most important thing to look at first off is how do people make the best of what they've got in the short term. So people have got a certain amount of space, they've got a certain desk layout. So how do we look at that space and determine how many people they can have working in that office safely? Simple space planning, repurposing of collaborative areas, perhaps to become more permanent work points if required, limiting meeting room numbers. If the building's big enough, then ideally putting one-way circulation routes in, and specific entry and exit doors if possible. So one of the major elements of this and how successful the reopening of offices is going to be is based around people's adherence to the guidelines. So a lot of what we're going to do is about reminding people. So a lot of graphics, sort of highlighting areas of hand washing, reminding people about the 2 meter distancing and so on. So this needs to start from as soon as people enter the office. So looking at reception areas, ensuring the safety of receptionists, so highlighting where people can stand and wait and how they interact. Busy areas within the office space. So trying to encourage that 2 meter distancing. It might be that furniture needs to be removed, or 75% of furniture. Putting in one-way routes around the space, highlighting sanitizer points, hand washing facilities, and perhaps signage just indicating how many staff can be in that area at any one time. Meetings are going to be hit quite hard, obviously very dense areas, high occupancy. So again, removing furniture potentially, or just highlighting how many people are allowed in one meeting room at any one time. Furniture is going to play a part of it. Looking at screens, sanitizer, how can we make those places, if nothing else, feel safe for staff when they move in. So looking at the products on the market, I think are probably my least favorite of all of them are desk screens, how we can enclose people in perspex. Not my favorite. I think this is really a last resort. So if higher densities are needed, a lot of people need to get back into a particular office, then yes, that allows face-to-face seating with a high perspex screen. It's not ideal, but it's something that can help certain examples. Hanging screen solution, perhaps slightly more innovative than the desk mounted. So almost like a roller blind, but with an acetate hanging down in between desks when required in front of reception counters. If it doesn't need to be in between that desk on that day, it can be taken away and it doesn't feel quite as obtrusive. Floor screens, another flexible way to look at things, dividing off areas, giving people that little bit of comfort. And another one again is furniture. So focus booths on the bottom left, just showing you how someone, again, we employ these in offices to give people that considered space for report writing and so on, but now actually they may be something to give people a little bit more comfort around social distancing, that and high back sofas and so on. Fabrics are going to come into play. So shared facilities with the right cleaning regime, having bleachable, cleanable fabrics is really going to help for shared space, reduce transmission. We're all used to seeing hand sanitizers dotted around, probably slightly more austere and clinical than we'd like. They're going to be around for a long time. So how do we make them more part of the furniture? How do we incorporate them so that they're more usable? One of the biggest ways of reminding people, and the easiest way, is carpet tiles. Milliken seem to be leading the way in this. They produce this range very quickly, so they're not wasting a good crisis. The easiest way to do it really is just dropping one tile out at a time, placing in arrows for one-way circulation, having reminders about 2 meter distancing, or just highlighting where hand washing points are. A quick overview really, and it's all about giving people what they need to do this. So if nothing else, giving them the tools they need to re-enter the office, but also giving them the provision and the reminders to undertake that and keep undertaking it properly. we've talked about bidwells earlier, so it's just worth highlighting. We're just looking with bidwells at doing some test areas. Bidwells have got a very nice central staircase running through the building. They're considering that of being a single route staircase running up through the building, and then there's 2 ancillary staircases as being the down staircases. You've got tight areas within the building, the printer hubs and the T-points, just a simple tile near there, just reminding people to adhere to the guidelines. And again, the green tiles you can see just showing having a large enough building, they've got the option of having a single route, one-way circulation routes, which is going to be a benefit. Desks. So with the careful space planning, it's looking at which desks should be used, which shouldn't, and if people adhere to that, then they know they'll be sticking to the 2-meter guidance. So some clear signage, desk not in use, putting those around the office so that no one really makes a mistake and adheres to it. Again, some reminder floor tiles around the chairs, just reminding people not to approach and keep that distance.
2 minutes, Barney.
Thank you. And again, signage at the start of the office. So as soon as you enter the office, a 2-meter reminder, a clear wait here sign protecting the reception staff. Again, another 2-meter as you walk into perhaps a slightly denser area like the breakout. And again, collaborative benches on the right, another 2-meter reminder. So it's all about keeping people up to speed, keeping it in front of their mind. So hopefully that was interesting. I'm under time, which is good. I'll hand back.
Thank you, Barnaby. That's very useful and good to see some emerging thoughts on how we might all move back into our offices. A few more questions have come in, but again, please, attendees, could you raise your questions in the Q&A so that we're ready for the panel Q&A at the end. So if I can pass over to Steve now, who he can share his screen. Yeah.
Will do. Thanks very much. Okay. Hopefully everyone can see that. So good afternoon, everybody. Last leg, talking about the future of the workplace. So we'll go through what the causes and how we come to what we think the future of the workplace is going to look like in a second. So just briefly, as Simon said, yeah, I work for Overbury. We're a national fit-out contractor working throughout the UK on interior design and interior refurbishment. As Barnaby said, we're on the cusp of returning to the office. We've labelled out here a couple of phases. First phase is literally getting people back into work safely, which is the key thing. Barnaby showed some great demonstration there of the kind of things that can be put in place to make people feel safe and be safe once they are in the office. And then phase 2, which is what we're going to look at in a bit more detail when we actually get back to the office in a more full-time basis. What does that look like for us? Essentially, we are on a journey. We've always been on a journey to create a supercharged office, or a great office space that's both efficient and productive. And as Barnaby and Eve have both mentioned, activity-based working, that's pretty much the direction of travel that the office interiors has been on over a long period of time. If anything, the past couple of months has just increased the acceleration towards that end goal somewhat. So the 3 key things that make up a high-performing office environment, clearly the culture, which Barnaby's touched on, technology as well, and the physical space. Those 3 elements in place, that's not going to change in the future. They underpin a great productive working environment. So let's look at culture in a bit more detail. As I say, the direction of travel was always in this more agile, activity-based working, that reliance or pushing that trust and empowerment onto employees to work where and how they see fit, depending on the tasks that they have in hand. That's now extended from just in the office to out of the office as well, and that mobility. Work is what we do, not where we do it. There's a huge cultural shift here as we look to as we transition and we manage more by output than we do by hours, which has always been a pretty much a typical way of managing in an office environment. If I can't see you, you're probably not working. And if anything, this pandemic that we've been through has kind of helped challenged those myths. we can see on the right side here at the moment, a lot of blue chip companies there have been the first ones to talk about being more remote working, accepting it, becoming the norm. Some of them not coming back before Christmas. Some of those actually it's more longer term than that. There's a real shift to actually, you know, we pay people a lot of money to work for us, and now we're actually going to trust and empower them to work where and how is best for them. We want them to be productive. That's all we've wanted. So giving people that choice both in and out of the office has opened up a real different avenue for the office. If that's the case, if people are going to be a bit more remotely working, what does that mean for that physical space that we've got left? Certainly, the remote element has really, in some ways, busted that myth that working from home is less productive. Actually, it's proven that working from home actually is about 43% more productive on average, largely down to the lack of distractions that you get in an open plan workspace. So the whole cultural change is very difficult for management, as I said, as we transition from managing by output rather than hours, focused on tasks driven rather than time driven. But through the course of history, we've always gone through change. It's what we do. It makes people uncomfortable, but if there was no change, we'd still be in caves wondering how to light fires. But so it's part of human nature that change is involved, although we do find it uncomfortable. You know, I'm sure everyone on the call probably gets up on a normal working day, gets up at the same time, showers at the same time, drives the same route, parks in the same spot, sits at the same desk. It brings us a feeling of comfort and safety, which we enjoy, that safety, that element. But we are on the cusp of a significant change in the way we do things, particularly in the office. So culturally, big changes afoot, but it was a path we were already on. Technology is the second element that really underpins the office of the future. It underpins the office that we've got now. Just some stats from Microsoft estimating in the last 2 months, they've seen 2 years worth of digital transformation, which is huge for us. In terms of, I'm sure you're all seen these applications, have used all, if not at least one of them. The massive uptake. I think Teams has seen a 600% increase since pre-COVID-19. 200 million participants in a single day this month for Teams. You know, record levels of usage. We've all become used to these. They've all become the norm, and probably everyone's now getting a bit fed up when you're on those back to back all day. But it's technology that is going to be around. We've all had these applications. We've just never used them. In a way, we've been forced to use them, and actually we're finding that they work. From a security point of view, they work, and from a productivity point of view, they work. They are going to be with us going forward, no matter what. Desk booking and room booking systems. You've probably all heard of meeting room booking systems, which are really, really great. You may have those in your offices at the moment. Those in London will know about desk booking, as people really want to efficiently use the space. The cost of office space in London is enormous. Using it effectively, desk booking. I can see desk booking expanding throughout the country as we plan and schedule perhaps teams and people who are going to be in the office at any one time, project teams, for example. Interestingly, technology is way ahead of the office environment, and we'll touch on that in a little bit more, but there is technology out there now. Windows collaboration displays, been around about 20 months now, released 20 months ago. Devices that have inbuilt sensors. Essentially, you can book a meeting, and when you turn up to that meeting, it will know how many people are in that room. They'll know it's a video conferencing call, and it knows you like the room at 20 degrees. So it will therefore turn the blinds down, dial up your conference call, but it won't actually dial that conference call until facial recognition picks up that you're actually in the room, and then it will dial. Technology's out there. This is the real challenge, I think, for those in the real estate area, landlords that are going to be under pressure for flexible, shorter leases, perhaps, but also higher expectations about what their buildings can do. For example, this technology, as we say, it's out there. That technology and hardware is there, but it needs to talk to buildings. So buildings need to be smarter. And with that duty of care for employees, can we get the M&E and HVAC systems to a point where they are providing the best possible environment for our staff, and are they connectable so we can integrate some of this technology. This is all hands-free, it's all connected over the internet, so it's solved some of that pandemic overflow, which is we're going to be living with for many years. And in America, I think they're estimating that the smart office, when you start talking about this and everything is connected, the smart office is valued somewhere in the region of about £46 billion by 2023, increasing at an average rate of about 12 to 13% year on year, which is enormous. There's phenomenal growth potential in this area. It will come. As I said, we've got better technology at home than we have in our offices. The office needs to catch up a little bit. Those have been to Disneyland, you may well have used these, the smart bands that they have, tracking where you're going, what you're spending, your waiting times. Also, they can manage your experience of being in the space as best as they can. The more they know about you and what you like and what you need, the better they can prepare your ongoing route. And this kind of technology is going to be coming into the workplace as well. Technology is way out there. As I said, we've got better technology at home. Those of you remember a short-lived brief history of Google Glass that died a death. This kind of wearable technology is coming back. We've got Fitbits, Apple Watches, those kind of things, the Garmin's and the Strava inbuilt technology, which is great. But there's going to be a shift into business area. So just launched recently Alexa for Business. It's in the home. It's going to come into the business, probably in quite a big shift. Again, it's all hands-free technology, voice-activated stuff to open, close doors, turn things on and off, etc. Why touch things takes away some of that risk. So Alexa for Business is coming. Those have also seen recently Apple are moving into this market. They were bringing out their own glasses late next year, maybe a little bit before that if they, because of how things are going at the moment. We've already got prices. We know it's definitely coming. It's going to be embedded to everything we're doing in the future, and the office has got to catch up with that as well. Now, I just wanted to talk about education briefly. It's been touched on by Eve. It's really, really important in terms of the commercial interior sector. Back in 2007, when there was a bit of a crash, universities, they just reintroduced tuition fees. So universities spent a lot of money creating fabulous learning spaces to attract students. And the reason we're talking about that is because that's had a knock-on effect. Students have come from these great environments with raised expectations. This is the norm. They've got great IT, they've got great furniture, they've got great spaces, they've got a variety of great spaces to learn from, to go about their working day. And then we take them from those environments and we go, there's your desk, start at 9, finish at 5, go and be as productive as possible. Expectations far outweigh what the office is providing at the moment. It's got to work harder and it's got to be better. Attraction and retention are two of the biggest words in commercial interiors, and they have been for the last 18 months, 2 years. And this is partly why the expectations of people coming into this space far outweighs what the office is able to deliver at the moment. So a little background on how come we've got to the future of the office, slightly sped up by the pandemic and things that we've adopted far sooner than perhaps we would have done. But the office of the future, if we're looking in more detail, is not a place we go by default. We go there because we want to or because we need to, not because we have to. It's not the default anymore. And in essence, it's becoming a more people-centric element. It's where we go, and it's all about user experience. It's people-centric design that we've been talking about. There's now an understanding, you know, Gen X, Gen Y. It's very easy to label people and put people in boxes in there, but in essence, everyone is different. We're all different. We all work in different ways and want to work in different ways. The office has got to provide that. So the office is really going to be the central hub of that cultural outpouring of a business. What creates that culture? It's the social hub. It's the collaborative hub. There's still going to be desks and workspace in there because not everybody will be able to or want to work remotely. There is still going to be work happening at an office space. It's not like the office is dead, far from it. It's just got to repurpose how it's set up today with a focus on desks and meeting rooms into something that, as Barnaby through the Bidwells process showed you this activity-based working, but even going a step further than that, accepting that remote working or working in the field is a work setting, the same as the desk or a sofa. Work happens in various places, and all those spaces need to come together to give people choice on how and where people work.
2 minutes, Steve.
Good. So space, what does that mean about space? Does it mean less or more? There's an argument for both. I think those with short-term leases probably will be thinking, I need less space because I'm remote working. Others will be thinking, well, if everybody comes in social distancing, we need more space. In reality, I think it's going to be repurposing the same space that we've got and using it better and more efficiently and effectively. It's going to be about that people-centric design, understanding who you are as a business, what your people want and what do they need to be productive when they're in the office, and then creating that space off the back of it. As we've said, it's a collaborational space, social space, a motivational space, an inspiring place to be. Yes, there's a focus on work and that collaboration and face-to-face stuff, but it's going to be, as we say there, a space to work, collaborate, concentrate, relax and socialise. All of those. It's got to work even harder than it did last year. I think there's some interesting things that will come out of it. I can see those who have been to universities, I think we'll learn a bit more from them as well as we migrate into almost like the office becoming a retail high street, where you'll have your tech bar, is the Genius Apple bar, that kind of philosophy will be in the office, your HR bar, your tech bar. You'll go there, get what you need, do some work, and then go off elsewhere and do your more concentrated bits of works. So in summary, it's got to be all of these things, which is really, really difficult for the office to do. It's got to work hard. It's got to be better. It will be better. What it looks like depends on the people who are in it. There is no one size fits all on this anymore, rolling out the same old thing. It really is dependent on each individual business, their culture and their people. But it's got to provide an environment where people are engaged and empowered and are enabled to be productive. And those three elements that Barnaby spoke about before, the culture, the technology and the space, have all got to work hand in hand. We're just accelerating the process and accepting remote working in a much bigger way. So I think that should leave us bang on time.
Super, Steve. Thank you very much. Some very wise words towards the end there, but also some very interesting statistics on some of the major players suggesting that their staff could be homebound, if that's the right word, for a number of months yet, even to the end of the year, and even Twitter suggesting that their staff will be given the option to work from home indefinitely, which it shows you the sort of level of change that's coming. So, okay, if I can now pass over to the Q&A session. We've got a number of questions that have come in, and as you can imagine, some of them are quite interesting. Some are asking about some costs, but let's just take this first one from Mark. I'm not sure who can answer this one, but the question is will there be discrimination in the workplace between those who return to the office and those working from home? That's a tough question. I don't know if any of the panelists would like to take that question. Some of you are on mute, but you might want to remain on mute. I don't know. But I guess, Bob, your staff don't have that option, especially the ones on site, do they? It's a tricky thing at the moment.
It is difficult, and one of the things that I've got quite nervous about is that sort of whole feeling of us and them between the workers based on site versus the workers that are all sitting at home in their bedrooms or wherever, and we need to avoid that sort of split.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether the interior designers have got some thoughts on that.
Simon, I'll comment on that.
Yes,
I think in short term, potentially, unfortunately, but I think those businesses that don't adopt that remote working is now a thing and is seen as a productive thing, and I think those businesses are the ones that are going to struggle as we go forward and get left behind. There is now a real battle for retention and attraction across all sectors, and those that are seen to be discriminating or not offering these kind of things are going to struggle to attract and retain the top talent.
Yeah.
I think that thing is also, it depends on the task that you're doing. So some jobs you can do at home quite easily, and other jobs you absolutely can't do at home. So I think, you know, it might be interesting to see if, you know, managers and company directors have to almost evolve the way that they kind of give work out so that it can be more effectively and efficiently done from home. I don't know. There's lots of psychology and social science in there.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Eve. Okay, a couple more questions. There's one coming up for James, but before we go on to that, Barnaby. Sorry, James, I didn't see you there. Sorry. Do you want to say something?
I was thinking that in the same way that there's legislation that prevents us legally from discriminating against people, I wonder if there might have to be legislation in this regard as well.
No, that's
none of us on this panel would, you know, none of us would want to discriminate, but I think there might have to be legislation to prevent it.
I think it's already proven that home workers are less likely to be promoted than those that work in the office doing the same role.
Really?
So yeah, it's something that needs to be looked at now. It's going to be a bigger issue.
Some sobering thoughts there. So yes, so as I said, James, there's a question coming for you in a minute, but before I do, Barnaby, someone's asked the question, costs for the sort of things that you were setting up and looking at for returning to work. I know it's a difficult question to answer, but are there any emerging costs? I think
I mean, the cost of some of the things I was talking about, the very simple things, the carpet tiles and the graphics are, they're not an expensive item. It's dropping, you know, it's a few carpet tiles in. They're not a huge price per square meter at all. It's when you start looking at major furniture changes and stuff, then the costs start rising. But initial graphics and carpet and flooring and stuff, it's minimal cost.
Okay, thank you. James, I'm going to interpret this question for you. It's about the principles being used in medium to large businesses. What about the SMEs and micro businesses? Now, Bidwell's is by no means micro, and in fact is probably above an SME now, but you've done all this work in your award-winning HQ, but you have other offices. Are you seeing some of the working patterns and office design principles out at Trumpington being moved out to some of your other offices?
I think what I can say is we've seen the limitations that some of our other offices have, and how they can be used in the new environment. So we've got offices which we only have one staircase and a fire escape, they're not conducive to distance working.
Right.
And I think if people now looking at real estate and looking at the sort of space they want to go into or be in, will now look at them from that perspective a lot more than we maybe once did. Whereas Bidwell House, the investment we've made in that with its multiple staircases, and it's not, there is a lot of space in Bidwell House, which lends itself to distance working. Some of our other buildings don't have that luxury.
There certainly are some practicalities with that, aren't there? So, Eve, a question for you in terms of, and we heard a little bit about it with Barnaby, and this might also be for Steve as well. In terms of revenue generation, in terms of these spaces, we already heard about, I think it was a 43% increase in productivity if you're working from home. But is that holding true? I mean, is there any data out there that would suggest that this new way of working will give us a more productive workforce, bearing in mind that the UK workforce is, I think, not that productive when compared to some of our EU competitors?
I think that's a difficult question for me to answer because I don't know statistically. But what I do know is that our practice, we have quite a few women working in our practice. I think at the moment we have 9 women and 1 man, which is probably quite unusual. And so consequently, perhaps, we have quite a lot of part-time and flexible working in place. And, I believe that if you kind of empower your staff and give them responsibility and delegate to them, they own up to that. And that's proven absolutely true. And we've got, everyone working remotely currently, and it's working quite well.
Okay, thank you. Steve?
Yeah, I'd back that up, as Eve said, when people do feel empowered and engage with the business, they're happier and therefore more productive. And Warwick University have done papers on people that are happier at 11 to 12% more productive on average because of that, because they feel part and trusted in that business.
I
that
guess
empowerment.
I guess there's going to be quite a bit more research coming out on this subject over the next few months. I would imagine
Absolutely.
there's going to be more data for us there, isn't there? I suppose one of the workplaces that we sort of haven't covered today is Bob, part of your workspace in terms of the construction site. And a lot of our CFCI members are part of that workplace. But my question is more about attracting and retaining people. This is probably a whole different subject, Bob, and probably a bit unfair to ask you today, but in the same way that the modern office environment, and I think Steve, you were suggesting people coming from university will demand much better working environments. Bob, what's your thought on construction workers and site staff demanding better workplaces, and is that possible?
Good question. And
Sorry.
Traditionally, I suppose a lot of construction companies have their offices on the edge of town, and they're quite, they're quite low quality office space. But some of the cabins that we have on sites now are phenomenal. You know, you look at the open plan working sites, locations we have on some of our larger sites. They're nicer than my offices, which is kind of a bit galling, really. I think it's essential. I mean, if I really think that comment resonates, that people are more productive if they've got a nice space to work in, and I think that applies just as much to people that are working with their hands, or as it does to people working in an office. You know, they're more respected if you're looking after them from a welfare perspective, and a decent canteen setup and so on, I think is essential.
Absolutely, and I'm sure that it's quite interesting to think about the distance and social distancing that we have on construction sites, and whether that would be any easier in factories. You know, we've been urged to prefabricate everything, but who knows? Again, that's probably a discussion for another day. An up and coming CFCI seminar, I believe. Barnaby, just one final question for you, and then perhaps we ought to draw to a close because we're nearly 2 o'clock. Some of the numbers resonated very well with the Bidwell's HQ to what Eve was saying previously. Eve highlighted a number of different profiles, I think 4 different profiles, from the squatter through to some transients, I think it was. And I think those profiles were suggesting in Eve's presentation that about 30% of the people don't tend to be in the office at any one time. I get the feeling that was similar to what you were seeing at Bidwell's HQ.
I think the figure was 65% are in this at only 80% of the time. So I think it was out of a possible 497 points. I think I think it was 150, 180 people at any one time. So some areas on certain days when you go into Bidwell's it's quite empty. Even though it's still as an agile area. But then it's those days, other days you go in, a Friday fry-up day, you tend to find that it's very busy. So
I wonder why. Perhaps on that note, talking of fry-ups, and we've all missed our lunch, we should perhaps allow people to go. But I'd just like to say on behalf of the CFCI, thank you very much to Eve, Barnaby and Steve today. A very interesting conversation that we've just had, and thank you for our trustees, Bob and James, for being involved in that. A fascinating subject that I'm sure is going to get a lot more coverage in the coming months. Yes, from the CFCI, thank you very much for your talk today. And we are 1 minute over today, so I'm going to stop recording and say goodbye to everybody, and thank you, and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.